Hi folks, so here I am for the weekly overview. I hope you guys made it through the solar eclipse, which I'm sure you did. So strange. I mean, the solar eclipse happened, it's about 6:15 or so, almost 6:20. So it happened about 7 hours ago for me. And this happened last year with the solar eclipse around this time of the year as well. It's Monday and I'm in Los Angeles, and you would think that it would be really busy and hectic and noisy, but everything just it was very, maybe everyone was watching or maybe people were aware or whatever it was, but it was very quiet. And the same is true of April of last year as well. It was just, everything got really quiet around that time. And yesterday, as I had warned you guys, at least for me, it was the first. I mean, it still wasn't a day off. When you're self-employed, as those of you who are self-employed know, you never really have a day off. There's always something to do. And so it becomes really rare and hard. I can't remember a day in a long time when I just did nothing, either work-related or chore-related. There's always something or the other to do. But yesterday was the closest it got to it. So the idea of the dark of the moon, the dark before the eclipse, it was hard to motivate. And as I've mentioned to you in other traditions, eclipses are a time to reflect, to lie low, to hunker down, to not be out and about, to not be watching the eclipse. At least in certain traditions, it's considered, the light of the sun is being eclipsed and all that kind of stuff. I don't know to what extent I buy into that. Sorry, I'm just gonna bring up my notes. I was being a little thoughtful in advance about what I wanted to say today to keep it efficient. But of course, I've started rattling on about the eclipse. But at least for me, it has actually been the last 36 hours, I would say, since Sunday morning Pacific time. And the eclipse wasn't for me on Monday, 11:20, about 11:13 a.m. Pacific time. And the new moon technically was at 11:20 a.m. It's been quiet, reflective, as I would expect it to be. A little bit anxiety provoking, because as I said before the new moon, it's not unusual to get a little bit depressed and a little bit hopeless and wonder if things will happen or work out, and just generally. But today was kind of remarkable in its non-Monday-like atmosphere. Let's just put it that way. It felt that way. And as you know, I tend to be fairly careful and skeptical about reaching conclusions, but I don't know, it felt that way to me. So it'll be interesting. Now, the new moon has occurred. And so whatever that means to you, I have found that I have been that much more impatient with that kind of lethargy since the new moon occurred, and I'm kind of ready to go. And I gave myself the rest of today to ease into things, which I'm a little frustrated about. So the idea of the waves starting to move to the shore, I find that the new moon occurs and the wind does start to come back into our sails. Just know though, that this first week you're still gonna. I would advise you, because it's an eclipse. And out of this entire period of Mercury retrograde and the eclipses that we've been talking about, it's after this solar eclipse till Mercury retrograde that we have the potential for kind of the most activity, the most yang, thought through, planned response to things. We might start to see results of certain things, response to things. Keep in mind that I would still advise that over the next 3 days till the 10th, 11th of April, maybe by the 10th, maybe over the next couple of days, finish up what you need to as part of the Mercury cycle in Capricorn. Wherever Capricorn is in your chart, the house it occupies, what have you been building since December 22nd, but especially January the 1st, go ahead and put the finishing touches on it. You're not really starting something new as much as putting finishing touches on something, which could be a good way to look at Mercury retrograde. It might take a little longer, particularly because we're talking about Mercury-related items and communication, etc. Because as I've said, on the 11th, or specifically when the retrograde Mercury conjuncts the Sun, a new communication cycle related to where the sign of Aries sits in your chart will begin. So that is, of course, one of the two aspects related to this week that I wanted to talk about. The first of these is Mars conjuncting Saturn in Pisces on April the 10th, and on April the 11th is a retrograde Mercury conjuncting the Sun in the sign of Aries. Now, a week from today, Monday the 8th of April, so on the 15th of April, we will have a retrograde Mercury conjuncting Chiron. So I'll talk about that a little bit, because by the time I don't think we can't really, I do need to talk about it. So let's make it three aspects we need to talk about. Two related to retrograde Mercury conjuncting the Sun, and then Chiron. Remember that this Mercury retrograde, the one other planet, I'll just use that word a little loosely, it's going to aspect 3 times as part of this retrograde. Direct, retrograde, direct is Chiron. And the new moon solar eclipse we had today is conjunct Chiron. So this, and the first conjunction with Chiron occurred, gosh, was it on the 20th? I want to say it was on the 20th of March. Yes, it was on the 20th of March. Good golly, Miss Molly. 20th of March. And so that was when Mercury was direct. Mercury conjuncted the North Node on March the 5th. Oh no, what am I saying? Mercury conjuncted the North Node on March the 19th. Mercury conjuncted the North Node on March the 19th. How's that for a Mercury retrograde slip? Mercury entered Aries on March the 9th. Mercury conjuncted the North Node on March the 19th. Mercury will not conjunct the North Node again. Mercury will come really close to conjuncting the North Node and then go direct. But on March the 18th, a day before Mercury conjuncted the North Node, it entered its shadow period, or its shadow degrees. The degrees, it's going to go over 3 times. So March the 9th, Mercury comes into Aries. March the 18th, it goes into 15 degrees and 58 minutes of Aries, which is where it starts its shadow period, and it conjuncted the North Node the next day, and it conjuncted Chiron the day after that, on the 20th of March. And Chiron is the planet it's going to conjunct 3 times. And the second of these conjunctions is, of course, going to be on the 15th. And the third of these conjunctions is going to occur after it goes direct on the 25th. So I expect in early May, I would imagine. I need to look that date up, and I will give you that. I'm not gonna do it right now. I'm not gonna do one of my infamous pauses while I search for information. But that is also coming up, and the conjunctions with Chiron are really relevant and important as a result of the fact that the new moon solar eclipse, of course, is conjunct Chiron as well. Now, there are a couple of things about this new moon solar eclipse I wanted to address. First and foremost, I have already done a new moon solar eclipse video, the one prior to this. So if you want information on the new moon solar eclipse and the various timelines it starts over the next 28 days, over the next 2 months, over the next 6 odd months, look at that. We can't talk about this week and not talk about the new moon solar eclipse in Aries, because it occurs on Monday of this week, a few hours ago. But I'm not going to get into detail here because I've already done that. So the last video will take you there, and I'll place a link to that last video after I'm done processing this. Basically, what I mean by that is I upload the video first, it goes onto YouTube, and then after the video has been uploaded, and sometimes you guys start to watch the video before I've had a chance to go in. Typically, I try to do it as soon as I can to just do things like update the description box and put some videos at the end that you can link to if you're interested in, and all that kind of stuff. Now, I used the word crisis to describe the video, to title the video on the new moon solar eclipse in Aries. And no one seems to have objected to that word, which is fine and fascinating. But I really meant, I wanted to explain, I did not mean crisis specifically or necessarily as, and I looked up different definitions because I was clear about what I was referring to, and I was just like, am I crazy because I'm using the word crisis in this way? I'm not referring to, when I look at dictionary definitions that come up when you just say Google crisis definition, I do not mean a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. That's one definition of crisis. I do mean, and this is closer to it, a time when a difficult or important decision must be made. And I do mean the turning point when an important change takes place. That's interesting. They talk about that as part of a disease. Turning point where an important change takes place, indicating either recovery or death. That's not how I meant it either. But there is something about choices, and there is something about how to move forward, and there is something about meditating on paths of stagnation and paths of growth. But there is this, and what I mean by it specifically, those of you who've been following my videos, just a quick recap, I've been referring to a direction that we've wanted to move in since the last Aries solar eclipse, which would make sense. These are North Node eclipses inviting us to develop skills and to move towards and to lean into the Aries part of our chart, the house occupied by Aries. That is where our growth is. The first of the eclipses was on April the 19th. I posed that by July, August, we had a sense of which direction we wanted to move in and we were ready to go, but we were not able to until the gates really opened by the middle of February. And after that, it was really a question of, oh, now I understand the enormity of this decision and this choice and moving forward and what it's going to take. And so that, but there are questions about what will the destination look like? Am I still committed to what I said I was committed to? And there are obstacles and there are challenges and I don't quite know how this is going to happen. And will this show up and that show up and all that kind of stuff? And that is when we look to the eclipses to accelerate that process for us somehow. And in this particular case, Mercury retrograde and the eclipses are happening at the same time. So Mercury retrograde also provides to us information. And so you guys have heard me say this over and over again. I'm just doing it in case someone new is watching this. Information that was either in our blind spot or that we suspected, but we just needed a certain amount of validation. And all of that then contributes. If the number of people I have talked to, especially as part of astrology readings, and in my own, who have talked about, and I showed you, at the end of the day, the imagery that most conjures up to some extent the energy of the time, as I said in the tarot deck, and that's what I'm looking at here, are both the Two of Pentacles and the Two of Swords card. So the Two of Swords card with this new moon there, really to me, is an emblem of the energy in the Aries part of the chart that these eclipses and this Mercury retrograde are trying to help us to resolve, and that this new moon solar eclipse really gets us moving on. And this is what I mean by a crisis. I'm sitting there unclear about how to move forward, not quite sure what to do, two swords, two paths, two whatever right in front of me, and hopefully this new moon, and astrologically what I'm here to say is this new moon sets up a few different timelines that will start to help us move forward. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, you might start to operate sooner with in the normal new moon cycle over the next 28 days, be decisive about which way you want to go and where you want to go and what you want to do. For those of us who have Mercury direct in the birth chart, we may wait until Mercury is direct. And as we head into May and June, really make clearer and firmer strides about which direction we're going to move in. And the other tarot card that I referred to, but largely because we are seeing heavy astrological influences both in the Pisces and the Aries part of the chart, and the Taurus part of the chart with the upcoming Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. But because we are seeing, so our time and our energy is likely to be spent managing and stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart while leaning into the forward direction in the Aries part of the chart. And there's a lot of contemplation involved, and hopefully this new moon solar eclipse a few hours ago will get us more and more off the path of contemplation and into action. The tarot card, of course, for the month of April 2024 is the Hanged Man. Suspended, letting the energy flow into the crown chakra, and looking for insights, pausing, meditating, reflecting, trying to gain insight. The energy card for May of 2024, as you guys may know, is of course the Death card, which less for us about physical mortality and more about transformation, endings, and new beginnings. So moving from the Hangman energy in April to actually endings and new beginnings, endings leading to new beginnings in May. And fascinatingly to me, actually, when we get to June 2024, yep, when we get to June, the card comes back to the Hierophant, which I find really fascinating. Conventional wisdom, conventional hierarchy, contracts, agreements. Anyway, we'll talk about that more when we get to June. So the word crisis I wanted to elaborate on and just kind of explain what I meant by it. But the expectation is, the reason why I'm saying that the next couple of weeks are important is because we, I think, are going to see and expect and want some of the new moon energy, irrespective of whether we have Mercury retrograde or direct in our chart, to start to move us. And I think we already have an instinctive sense that if we did not have severe or serious obstacles or challenges in our way, which direction we would likely move in. Where is the growth and where is potential for stagnation? And it's fine to still be in that Two of Swords mode and continue to experiment and see, based on the different timelines that I set up in the last new moon in Aries solar eclipse video, when the clarity comes. When it comes to following the North Node, and today was a North Node eclipse, as I have said to you, it is important to be clear on what is calling you and where you sense the growth is and where the adventure is. But it is very important to make sure that as you move towards it, you are clear about what it is that you need from an emotional and financial security perspective, because the North Node can do a number on it. You can become so wrapped up in what you want to do. And that was part of the issue of knowing which direction we wanted to move in July, August of last year, and then being thwarted to some extent, because the universe was like, you're ready to jump off the cliff, but you're not taking into stock what needs to be done in order to actually get there. And there's, as I said, there's a longer timeline to this. We still have eclipses of release in the Libra part of the chart coming back again, October 2nd to December 2nd of this year. And we have another eclipse of leaning into an Aries on March 29th of next year. So whatever these timelines are going to be for you. More importantly, I hope that you use the power of this eclipse conjuncting Chiron, and I've talked more about that in that last video, to come back to yourself, to take back your power, to resolve, to heal, to understand that whatever wounds and debilitations you're going to end up facing as you decide to move forward, whatever obstacles you have to take up, remember to focus on coming back to yourself, understanding your shadow side, understanding your wounds, diagnosing them appropriately so you can heal properly. And in that process, take back your power and move forward accordingly. If over the past 24, 48 hours, you've needed to rest and lie low, that's fine. A lot of people feel like they feel the energy of the new moon much more once the moon actually becomes visible, once you can actually see the crescent. I can find and feel the energy of a new moon after a new moon. It doesn't take long for me to feel that it's a different energy. Prior to the new moon, I was perfectly happy And it could be a psychological thing now at this point in time. I was perfectly happy chilling and taking my time. But since the new moon, increasingly, that prior to new moon energy is not quite satisfactory. And there's a feeling of, all right, let's go. And I think that let's go energy, it's a sign of Aries. The moon in Aries, as I said, knows what needs to be worked on and what needs to be fixed and what needs to be corrected. So harness that new moon in, we get one, sometimes two new moons in Aries, the let's go sign. So by all means, use the discontent, the ants in our pants, the itch that Aries gives us to solve, sort out, accomplish things. And in the process, as I said, come back to yourself and take back your power. Finish the Capricorn Mercury cycle. That is what I wanted to say to some extent. And with the emphasis on Chiron, out of the 3 Aries North Node eclipses, this one today for me is the most significant, because it really gives us a chance to move forward towards the Aries part of our chart and address some serious areas of woundedness, self-sabotaging, lack of confidence. It is astrologically the most productive of the 3 eclipses, I would argue. So lean into it and understand what it is that you're trying to go after in the Aries part of the chart. Try and understand what Chiron is trying to heal. Something really, really primal, often linked right back to childhood. Understand how it has been showing up in your life. Understand what obstacles in their way for you to get to where you want to get to. And try and understand how those obstacles are linked to what Chiron is trying to heal, and take that on. Move forward. Start to move in that direction and see what you need to do to come back to yourself. Now, there were, as I said, 3 aspects related to this week we need to talk about. Mars conjuncting Saturn in Pisces, Mercury retrograde conjuncting the Sun in Aries, and then Mercury retrograde conjuncting Chiron in Aries. Let's talk about the Pisces part of the chart. We've already discussed that we are juggling energetically, stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart where there's probably been some sort of a crisis or some sort of a need for structure and clarity going on since 2016-17, maybe even going back to 14-15, but especially in 16-17. Mars conjuncting Saturn. What do you want me to say about this, really? Mars is not going to conjunct Saturn again in Pisces. So even though Saturn is in Pisces, Mars is not going to conjunct Neptune again in Pisces. Mars takes about a couple of years to go around the chart. In a couple of years' time, when Mars conjuncts Saturn and Neptune, they will both be in Aries. All 3 of them will be in Aries. So Saturn came into Pisces in March of 2023. This is the one conjunction that Mars is going to make with Saturn on the 10th, with Neptune on April the 29th. Mars and Saturn traditionally are the 2 malefics, 2 negative planets. I am more inclined to believe in and go after modern Western definitions of planets as not being completely malefic and not being completely benefic. The benefic planets, Venus and Jupiter, the malefic planets, Mars and Saturn. But I understand why they're considered malefics. Saturn doesn't necessarily make us feel light and easy and good. In fact, it doesn't. And Mars brings conflict, competition. I read somewhere today, I was looking at different things, and someone described this energy as egoic, and that's a great word, desire. For me, as you've heard me say in the chart, of course, Mars is our male energy, our yang energy, our testosterone energy. But I really feel like but it's necessary. You know, we can't just sit at home, and we've got to go out and create our own reality. And ultimately, when it comes to immediate, urgent, assertive action or sustained action, the planets related to action are really Mars and Saturn. Insofar as with Mars, we have to go out and pursue our goals, or we have to protect what we value. Mars, the symbol for Mars, as you know, is that arrow. So what goals are we pursuing? Hunting, gathering. And if it's egoic, you know, we got to eat. We got to live. We got to have shelter. We got to have goals. We got to go after something. We got to do something. You can't just be in Venusian receptive mode the entire time. Venus defining more of what we value and sort of going with the natural flow of things and bringing opportunities accordingly. But then we've got to go after those opportunities and use planets like Mercury, our thinking, our communicating, our transacting, but especially Mars, that external energy to go and achieve things, get things done, execute on them, and protect ourselves and protect our boundaries, because in the execution of tasks, we are going to come across other forces, people, whatever, who, in the pursuit of their own goals or based on what they're protecting, are going to either be competition or obstacles, or may not want to move at the same timeline that we do, or, you know, we've got to figure out with Mars. The challenge with Mars, of course, is that, you know, as I say, we've got to try and stay assertive and not aggressive. And with Mars, sometimes the challenge comes externally. Someone there's a throwdown, someone hits us with a glove and challenges us to a duel. You get that notice in the mail. You get that summons legally. You get that conflict. You get called out on something. Someone attacks you. Someone does something to hurt or harm you. Someone does something to grab something that is of value to you. Someone opposes or challenges. That is where Mars becomes a malefic. Someone engages you in conflict. Saturn is a planet of action. What is your highest potential? Saturn provides challenges and opportunities, often relatively small and relatively mundane, but requiring us to come face to face with what prevents us from achieving and meeting those challenges successfully. And in the process, meeting them successfully. So Saturn, I liken to the teacher. My clients have heard me say this, you've heard me say this, who makes us wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and run around the track and eat the right foods and exercise the right way, and so we can jump the right hurdles and we can be successful and we can make the best possible time that we can. And ideally, we start to prepare in such a way that we can come first in the race. And what is our highest potential for whatever it is that we're trying to do, and what is getting in our way? And Saturn is constantly rapping us on the knuckle. Saturn is the strict teacher, strict practice your scales every day or else you will get rusty, and we will. You say you're a writer, write every day. You say you're a singer, sing every day. You say keep up what has been given to you, and how are you harnessing and maintaining and harvesting that? How do you show up every day? How do you not give yourself to laziness and gluttony and luxuries and plenty? And here we're talking about the benefics, Venus and Jupiter, that feel great, and that's why they're considered benefics. But ultimately, while they give us the brakes, while they smooth our way, while they grease the wheels for the way to move forward in a way that Saturn does not and Mars may not, they can create their own challenges and problems, which is they don't give us the stimulus to have to get up and face the world and get something done. Remember, we talked about there's no progress without conflict in the last video. You have to fight for peace. You have to fight for peace. Mars conjuncting Saturn, two classic things can be, and this is related to the Pisces part of your chart, the house occupied by Pisces and what that house stands for, where there's likely been some sort of a crisis or a need for stability or definition. So if you're pursuing a spiritual or artistic inspired Neptunian career or goals, then Saturn's presence in Pisces since March of 2023 is demanding that you put structure around it and see results. Not enough to say, well, I'm going to, no. What does success mean to you here? Let's go after it. But if you're dealing with Neptunian shadiness and loss, either through some sort of a deceptive means or just cloudiness, and not, Saturn is saying, first see and revealing what is real in that part of the chart. And this Mercury retrograde, even though it's in Aries and not in Pisces, will help with some of that. And demanding, sorry if you can hear a kind of a low moaning, that's my cat sleeping and snoring right now. So he's like 6 feet away. Very sweet. But somewhere, you know, with Saturn showing us clarity and demanding that we stabilize this part of the chart, either by in some sort of Five of Cups way, where we are coming to terms with what is lost and what needs to be maintained and built on, as a result of getting clear on what's been going on, or setting boundaries, or leaving the room, or whatever it is that we need to do but stability is called for. Mars conjunct Saturn is also, insofar as it makes things clear to us, there to teach us lessons and sometimes present us with karmic results. You did this or you did not do this, and here's the outcome. What do you learn from it? How do you incorporate the learning, and how are you going to move forward? And if you don't incorporate the learning, and if you don't handle this based on where things are going, trust and know that they will continue to go in that direction, but you'll probably end up in a deeper problem, or a deeper hole, or a deeper pit. Mars conjuncting Saturn can mean one of two things. In a more challenging way, it can mean that somebody else presents some sort of tries to do something to hurt you, to harm you in a long-standing way. With Saturn, the results are often not a matter of a couple of weeks. So it could be, because Mars is conjuncting Saturn, Mars is going to conjunct Neptune, and it's coming on the heels of Venus conjuncting Saturn and conjuncting Neptune, as it did in March and in early April. It could be that what was of value was displayed to us with the Venus transit through Pisces, which occurred. Venus's transit through Pisces occurred from March 11th to April the 5th. And Venus conjuncted Saturn on March the 21st and conjuncted Neptune on April the 3rd. So during the month of March and into early April, Venus established and presented what was valuable and what is worth protecting. And Mars comes in, first and foremost, the Mars conjunct Saturn on a more positive side, let me focus on that, may mean that over the past 5 or 6 days and over the next couple of days, you are actively thinking about coming up with a plan to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. It is our one Mars-Saturn conjunction. There is no conjunction that I can think of that is more about building a strong foundation, taking action, coming up with an effective plan, laying the groundwork. What are you going to do, and how are you going to go about doing it? How are you going to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart? That is the positive manifestation of, and if you have been contemplating, thinking about this, likely to get into action on this over the next few days, then that could very well be a Mars-Saturn conjunction. Either hand in hand to this, or another, which has to be mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be unnecessarily negative with a Mars-Saturn conjunction, it's that someone in that kind of competitive, grabby way, take some sort of action with some long-standing result behind it to challenge you, to hurt you, to harm you, to grab something from you. Remember, because we've had Neptune. Now, when Mars gets ready to conjunct Neptune by April the 29th, we may be in a place, in a more positive aspect based on our plans, we may be in a place to address the shadiness and the leaks head on by the 29th. By that time, Mercury will also be direct. Not moving fast, but direct by April the 29th. But it's also likely or possible that if Mars is conjuncting Saturn and something is, some sort of a glove or something is thrown at your feet, or it's a kind of a hit, a competitive, grabby issue, conflict, somebody else challenging you, some sort of comic result really making its presence felt. It could be that by the time we get to the Mars-Neptune conjunction, that really has to be looked at with a certain amount of power from our side. If it is around creating and constructing something spiritual or something artistic, then Mars conjunct Saturn is the plan. Mars conjunct Neptune means you're building it. By the, it starts that process. It's an important aspect. Just as Mars conjunct Pluto in the middle of February was an important aspect. Because Mars's energy is so yang and demands us to take action or respond appropriately. Even though this is not a Saturn card, it could very well have a kind of a feeling of the Seven of Wands. To take arm against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. To quote the Bard. It's very likely a pot. Now, if you're coming up with a plan, a project plan, a construction plan of how you're going to lay a strong foundation, wherever Saturn is transiting, there's an invitation to lay a strong foundation. Moving forward. That can sometimes mean detaching from outcomes and people or forces who do not have your best interest at heart. It can mean taking arms against it. Now, this is YouTube. Please do not take physical arms. You have to be so careful what you say. I'm not saying that anybody needs to resort to any form of physical violence. If you are dealing with some sort of an issue that is combative, seek appropriate help through the authorities. Find a lawyer, find legal assistance, find law enforcement. Do not, when I say take arms against a sea of trouble, I'm talking more metaphoric. I'm talking about the idea of managing situations, not, please be clear about that. Assertive, not aggressive with Mars, because that will create, then Mars turns into a malefic. Then you're really dealing with the red planet, and you're dealing with Mars's themes of cuts and injuries and incisions and bleeding, and we are not interested in going there. Not on this channel. There are other ways of dealing with issues and challenges and problems that are socially acceptable. I'll get off that soapbox, but I just want you to be clear about it. I feel clear about why I used that particular Shakespearean quote, and I'll stand by it. But I want to be clear that neither Hamlet nor I specifically are talking about physically addressing situations. So or through physical violence. So please be clear about that. Reflect over the last 5, 6, 7 days, over the next couple of days, on what it is that you need to do. The thing that is coming up for me so strongly is if we contemplate Saturn's transit through Pisces as a way to build a strong, stable foundation in the sign of Pisces, when you take responsible Saturn-blessed actions in the sign of Pisces, by the time Saturn leaves, it is likely to reward you with a strong and solid foundation that you can rest on for the next 28 odd years. That's as long as Saturn takes to go around a chart. What do you think? If something occurs over the next couple of days and you find out about it in hindsight and you find that it's meant to hurt you or rob you from something or something along those lines, contemplate what you need to do. Do you need to reach out to the right authorities or the right kind of assistance to help you deal with it? Is it something that you can just detach from? What is it going to take for you to build a strong foundation in the Pisces part of the chart? And Mars conjunct Saturn on the heels of Venus conjuncting Saturn and Neptune by early April may well I think a great way to spend this energy is just to think about what is your end game or end goal in the Pisces part of your chart. How would you define stability and peace of mind and a strong foundation in this part of the chart? And then take action accordingly and use Mars's assertive energy to take action accordingly. You know, Mars will ultimately conjunct Neptune at the end. So just see how that proceeds and progresses. The other two aspects that we're going to be looking at for this week, of course, are related to Mercury retrograde. Why has Mercury gone retrograde in Aries? We were galloping and moving forward in the way, and forward-moving things were happening in January, February, and March until Mercury said, hold up, it's the Aries part of the chart we need to lean into, but I need to reverse. There are things that I need to put in front of you, human, that are either in your blind spot or that you suspect but you need to know about, and you need to factor in, and you need to clean up. So we are, of course, in the middle of this process. Mercury went retrograde on April the 1st, going to go direct on April the 25th. As I said, it conjuncted Chiron on March the 20th, a day after it entered its shadow degrees. And Chiron is the most important planet right now in the sign of Aries, insofar as we've got a whole new moon solar eclipse and potentially a whole 6-month timeline around healing whatever needs to be healed in the Aries part of the chart so that we can move forward in the Aries direction effectively. And we've got the planet of communication saying, I'm going to have a conversation with Chiron in the middle of all this too, 3 times. I had one once when I was going direct. Now I'm reversed, and I'm going to have it once again. And what could possibly be coming up for you this week and even over the past few days that is requiring you to process and go back and look at your communication and your transactions strategically to help clean up things? You're thinking how you're going to go about them, what you know, what you may need to address, where the obstacles are, what you did not know, what you kind of thought it sort of knew, but now know for certain. And Mercury retrograde conjunct the Sun is a very internal conversation between your mind and your conscious thinking self and your inner highest self, the sun. Now, when Mercury goes retrograde, it's the days when it goes retrograde, April the 1st, when it goes direct, April the 25th, and when it conjuncts the sun, April the 11th, that we say that we feel the kind of retrograde mayhem the most. Miscommunications, bizarre phone call, bizarre communication, delayed schedules for transportation, technology breaking down, all that kind of notorious stuff. And there are a couple of videos I've done on this Mercury retrograde. So if you look back at the past 10 videos, you'll see which ones I'm referring to if you want more details on that. But Mercury retrograde means we need to go back over some stuff. We need to go back to the drawing board. We've been putting our eggs in a certain basket. We've been moving forward with certain assumptions. We need to rethink what the F or H, whatever your word of choice is, we've been doing. And get real and get clear on what it is that's going on and what it is that needs our attention, and then move forward after April the 25th with our heads screwed on right and factoring that stuff in. And it may be that we see what is problematic about putting all our eggs in a particular basket, and we say, thank you, basket. I see how that has served its purpose. I'm moving forward to other baskets, but roughly in the same direction, or whatever that means. There's always the disappointment of a Mercury retrograde revealing things that are disappointing to us. But now the retrograde Mercury first conjuncts the sun and inaugurates a communication cycle in the sign of Aries. That, by the way, am I going to need to do a separate video on the Mercury cycle in Aries? I might. Conjuncts the sun April the 11th. Goes direct April the 25th. It's really, it's April 25th to June the 14th when a direct Mercury conjuncts the sun next, that you're really going to be planting the seed. As I've said to you, there's something about this new moon solar eclipse that takes us to about the week before and after June the 8th. And I'm going to stand by that. Until June the 14th, we are going to be we're going to be defining, whether we know it or not, subconsciously, I think, what it is that we want to do and build in the Aries part of the chart. And don't underestimate a Mercury cycle. Almost everything happens using communication and technology in 2024. Writing, speaking, emails, technology. It's just, Mercury is, when I say action is taken through Mercury and Mars, traditionally, it might have been Mars and rolling up our sleeves and getting out and getting things done. Today, Mercury is a huge part of this. Unless you are farming or plumbing or building or today, phones and automobiles and technology, you can't. So whatever it is that is to be achieved and move forward on in the Aries part of the chart, April the 11th starts that process. April the 11th to April 25th, we're kind of taking stock and determining where we're going to go. And this conversation between Mercury retrograde and the sun on the 13th is really, it's so interesting that we have the Mars-Saturn conjunction in Pisces and the Mercury retrograde conjunction with the sun the day after. It goes to that two pentacles, stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart, or determining what's going to mean a strong foundation here and figuring out what we want to do with it, as well as leaning towards the growth offered by the Aries part of the chart, both of which, as I've said, are serving the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. And if you want to know more about that, I'm not going to go into it here. Look at the last video on the North Node solar eclipse on that. I'm going to do a separate video on the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, but we've been dealing with that conjunction since May 2023, as far as I'm concerned. And as I've mentioned to you, here I go. I say I'm going to do it, and it's about ending a 12-13-year cycle and starting a 12-13-year cycle that is authentic to you in the Taurus part of the chart. The growth is in the Aries and the Taurus part of the chart, the excitement. The stabilization is needed in the Pisces part of the chart. Been saying it and saying it and saying it. So Mercury going retrograde and giving us a sense of what the lay of the land is in the Aries part of the chart. And not just that, whatever it is that we need to contend with and know and learn and understand. What could it possibly be pointing to? What is the conversation it would have with the sun? What have you been... I would imagine that since Mercury went retrograde, you are that much clearer. You don't have to be clear about the direction and all the details. But you now know what's real and what you're dealing with. You know what is in your heart as far as the Aries part of the chart is concerned. And you may not have clarity, but you know what is unclear. And you know what the challenges are, and you know what the obstacles are, and you know what needs to get done. And you know, Mercury retrograde, as I've said to you, is time to get real. When we move forward and Mercury is direct and the planets have a certain amount of velocity, it is normal and natural to move forward based on goals, and therefore a certain amount of a fantasy element comes into it. Oh, I'm going to interview for this. And it's really, you've got to be totally inhuman to not build outcomes or not imagine things or not think that the things that you're moving towards and that the universe seems to be telling you to move towards won't have positive outcomes, or you wouldn't move towards them in the first place. And so Mercury goes retrograde and says, this is what's real, and this is what's real, and this is what's real, and this is what's actually happening, and this is what's actually happening, this is what's real, this is what's real, this is what you have to consider, this is what... Come back to Earth. Go back to your plan. So our mental processing, it's so interesting. It's a very internal time around this eclipse. And it's a nice thing to, as we harness the power of this eclipse and start to move forward and get ready to start to take action in the Aries part of the chart, whether it is over a 2-week cycle for those people who have Mercury retrograde in their birth charts, or a 4-week cycle, or a 2-month cycle, more for people who have Mercury direct in their birth charts, and for everybody kind of a 6-month cycle. And then of course the cycle picks up again after March the 29th of next year for a couple of months. Or another 6 months. Whatever that cycle is, it's nice to, it's one of those things where we are getting clear on a lot of stuff by Wednesday, Thursday with regard to what we need to tackle and what we need to address. And when Mercury conjuncts Chiron, following that as we head towards next Monday, a week from today, we may find that we are either considering what actions to take, or we are starting to take actions towards what it is that we need to heal. It may be, again, getting more and more clarity around what it is that needs to be healed. And once Mercury goes direct after the 25th, and as we head into early May, and Mercury conjuncts Chiron for the 3rd time, those of us who have Mercury direct in our birth charts may find that it's that 3rd conjunction when we're really taking yang communication action towards healing. But observe and see where this week takes you. It's possible that the Mars-Saturn conjunction still has a kind of a yin, let me think about this, let me see what I want to do, let me see what the plan of action needs to be, quality to it. Because Mercury is retrograde at this time. It's a different energy for people who have Mercury retrograde in the birth chart than those who have Mercury direct in the birth chart. Because Mercury retrograde for Mercury retrograde people is much more decisive and much more action-oriented. Whereas for the rest of us who have Mercury direct, it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a pause. It's meant to be a taking in. It's meant to be a getting real. It's meant to be an absorption of, as I said, the things that we've either not seen or the things that we've kind of suspected but not been able to articulate and know, and to start to factor that in. And there's more to come. Just because Mercury is making its conjunction with the Sun and with Chiron, we've got to wait for that April 25th date when Mercury goes direct. But because very often Mercury puts a parenthesis to whatever it is that it needs to share around that time. By the time we get to the 27th, 28th, we may really, that's by when we'll really know everything that Mercury is trying to address. And this is why I'm saying that as far as the Aries communication cycle is concerned, building something in the Aries part of the chart using communication, transactions, and technology, and Mercury, the Yang phase of that, the action-oriented planting seeds, starting to take action, is really going to happen after Mercury goes direct. So Mars conjunct Saturn in Pisces. What does stable foundation and stable success look like for you in the Pisces part of your chart? Does it involve some loss with Neptune there? The loss typically with planets like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are meant to free you. It's just, I think it's the Neptune losses that are the hardest because they answer to dissolving attachment in a way that is unpleasant. Pluto is just so much more assertive that it's kind of clearer. With Neptune, it's just like, what is going on? But once you get clear on what it is that a strong, stable, peaceful foundation looks like in the Pisces part of the chart, you'll know how to harness Mars's energy to build towards that. But the Mars-Saturn conjunction is about, on the positive side, I'm summarizing now, constructing a plan of action to bring stability to this part of the chart. Either if you're pursuing artistic and spiritual goals, to come up with a plan of action to do so successfully, and in a grounded way, and with goals that are really answering to your highest potential. Saturn is not going to put up with small goals. Saturn's going to say, no, go for it. We want to create a foundation here that is going to last for 28 years. Or if you're dealing with loss and deception or something challenging or something foggy, then to figure out how to handle that, how to manage that. If someone cements or takes some action towards you that is challenging with this Mars-Saturn conjunction, and I'm not trying to be negative, I'm not trying to fill you with fear or paranoia, I'm just doing my job as an astrologer. We can't ignore that possibility. Then you're going to have to determine whether you're going to deal with it or whether a strong, stable foundation in the Pisces part of the chart comes with a degree of leaving a situation or leaving or detaching, or seeing how to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart by accepting and understanding what is not for you in it. And then you can build a strong foundation. Remember, the North Node eclipses start to enter the Pisces part of the chart very soon. Just to complicate everything, right now we're talking about stability and loss. And soon we're going to also be asked to lean into the Pisces part of the chart as part of our growth. That's going to become really fascinating. I'm smiling, but I'm actually looking forward to it. At the end of the day, what Saturn and the North Node are going to do is they're going to help us fix our energy leaks here. There's something about the Pisces part of the chart that has just been sapping us. If it's something constructive we've been trying to build, we haven't been able to do it until we've had Saturn here, and now we're going to have the North Node here. Great. If it's something that we've been trying to combat or manage or get clarity on and to protect ourselves from, then Saturn and the North Node will help to do that. When it comes to the Mercury conjunctions with the Sun and Chiron, with the Sun conjunction, this has been going on for the past few days. It will not surprise me at all if, as we head into this eclipse, there's been a lot of reflecting, a lot of thinking, a lot of churning, a lot of getting clear on and really looking squarely at what needs to be addressed, what needs to be changed. That's classic Mercury retrograde in its higher form, getting real on things. Slowing down from April the 1st to 25th, so you're not galloping forward only to find yourself in trouble. Why do I need to go back to the drawing board? As I said, you may not have answers and a sense of direction if you have Mercury direct in your birth chart completely defined till the end of April, early May, even as you head into June. That's fine. But by Thursday, by the 11th, by this conjunction, I think you're going to know what's what, at the very least, in a way that you did not on April the 1st, in a way that now it's really, oh wow, I've got to factor this in. I'm so glad I paused. If you have Mercury retrograde, as I said, you're going to be more decisive and be ready to take more actions and be clear about which direction you want to go in now. By the time Mercury retrograde conjuncts Chiron on Monday, based on what you now know are potential obstacles, what is going on, that especially could involve communicating with others, getting on the same page with others. But what is going on? It could be that with that conjunction with Chiron, you contemplate what needs to be healed and what needs to be addressed and what has been keeping you from moving forward in an obstacle-free way as you headed towards April the 1st. So that by the time you start to, Mercury moves forward and you see that final Mercury-Chiron conjunction in the beginning of May, you are clear about what you're going to be communicating to and whom and how you're going to be handling this particular topic, subject, area of healing that is so topical and so urgent and so important, given the fact that the new moon solar eclipse we had today was conjuncting Chiron to the minute. In the middle of all this, we're going to have Venus conjuncting Chiron. We're going to have Venus conjuncting Mercury retrograde. We're going to have Mars in May in Aries conjuncting the North Node and Chiron. So there's more to follow. There's more to do with the healing, more to confront, more actions to take without a doubt. The new moon solar eclipse sets us up and continues to kind of take the ball from the April 19th, 23 eclipse into 2025. Interesting that we have the new moon solar eclipse today, and right after that we have, because it's with the new moon that the wave starts to move towards the shore, and right after that we have Mars and Saturn conjuncting, Mars being that yang, assertive, action-oriented planet, and a retrograde Mercury conjuncting the Sun and the Sun conjuncted Chiron today, as I said, at the time of the new moon. So this contemplation of what needs to be healed, what we look, I'm not even going to keep going on and on about it, because I suspect that we're all in this space. Thank you, Mercury, for going retrograde, because clearly I need to adjust what I need to adjust and take in what I need to take in and process what I need to process and learn and get present to and get clear on what is actually going on and needs to be addressed. Where am I headed? What choice am I going to make? What does that look like? What are my obstacles? What do I know now that I did not before? What do I need to face? What do I need to address? Thank you, Mercury, because prior to that, I was moving forward and there was a lot of progress made between January and March in all sorts of different ways, and gates and portals opened by the middle of February. And but I'm so glad I was not just galloping forward, because I needed this time to recalibrate. And so the new moon solar eclipse occurs. We have the Mars-Saturn conjunction. We have the Mercury retrograde Sun conjunction, and we have the Mercury retrograde Chiron conjunction in a week. You ready to go? Great. Let these planets and these conjunctions help you get clarity and take action. And remember, we talked about Mercury retrograde as the arrow pulling back. And with this week's aspects, it's a little bit like, all right, I'm getting greater clarity on where that target is and what it is that I'm going to be moving towards once Mercury goes direct. And you're kind of moving towards that anyway. I mean, you've been moving towards it since July, August of last year, since the solar eclipse of last year on April the 19th in the Aries part of the chart. I hope that Mars-Saturn conjunction is not too painful for you guys in a couple of days. It's not the easiest. It's not the easiest. But as I said, there is no other conjunction as powerful and as energizing and as grounded for coming up with a plan. You know, when you have to build a house, it's like the blueprint. It's like the project plan. There's no other conjunction that will help you come up with an action plan related to what a strong foundation and a strong structure in the Pisces part of the chart is going to look like by the time January 26th, 2026 comes around. Whatever happens this week may very well be the bedrock on which stability in the Pisces part of the chart is achieved. Whether it is you taking action in a certain direction, I'm starting to lose the light. Whether it is something happening that causes you to say, I'm out of here, I'm letting go of this, whatever it is. That's the best I can do in this general reading. So if you enjoy the video, if you think it's going to be useful to someone, share, let people know. If you're interested in getting a reading with me for your own personal chart, my contact information, my email address is going to be in the description area below. You can email me there for rates and information. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Click the wiggly bell, the bell next to the subscribe button and the wiggly bell on top of it to be notified when I do new videos. Like, comment if you feel inclined to do so. It will give the video greater circulation. And as I said, if you find my content useful, feel free to refer other people to this channel. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry to be a little bit pausy at times in this video, but I was trying to, I don't know, it just is the way it was. One more thing, and I may need to do a video on this tomorrow because I don't know if everyone's going to stay for this thing. Remember that with Mercury retrograde, the houses ruled by Mercury in your birth chart, where Gemini and Virgo are going to be affected by this Mercury retrograde. Always ask the question, how the Virgo and Gemini part of your charts are being affected by this Mercury retrograde. What does this drawing back of the arrow tell you about what needs to shift in matters and affairs related to that part of the chart? I'm going to probably do a really short video on this, even if I'm just to say this tomorrow. So if it's going to be repetitive, it's going to be repetitive. And then I think we need to look at the dates for the different upcoming Aries conjunctions. When is Venus going to conjunct the North Node? When is Venus going to conjunct Chiron? When is that last Mercury retrograde with Chiron going to occur? Mercury direct with Chiron. I think it might be time to kind of just do a sweep on the Aries aspects next as well. But I think I'm gonna give you a friendly reminder, because I don't think everyone has made it to this part of the video. By the time I start talking about what, you know, subscribing and all that kind of stuff, I think people leave. So just that's an interesting point, and I might just do a short video on that tomorrow or the day after. Okay, over and out.